Guys, I think I'm crashing out. Cause my brain still hasn't processed that this thing is real. Cause this is the same character. Honestly, the reason why this video exists is to prevent myself from going insane. Because this is unacceptable! For those not in the know, All You Need Is Kill is a light novel written by Hiroshi. And it's about a Japanese military soldier who keeps getting killed by terrible monsters, waking up the morning of his death like nothing ever happened. Retaining all the memories of those previous experiences, he goes on to try and break the loop himself. All the while fighting this seemingly impossible battle against these terrifying aliens that have ravaged Earth. If that plot sounds familiar, that's because the 2014 movie Edge of Tomorrow is based on this book, as an Americanized adaptation, starring Tom Cruise and Emily Blunt. There's also a manga adaptation of the light novel drawn by Takeshi Obata. Yes, that Obata, the Death Note guy. My gosh, his art is like a masterpiece in this one. I even have the softcover copy of this manga in my apartment, and I've really enjoyed it. Now, the latest iteration of this work is an anime movie. Note, I didn't call it an adaptation, because I struggle to call something an adaptation when it shares almost no resemblance with the work it's apparently based on. Because it looks like this, and like this. And the main character of this little romp that's depicted on these posters is the second most important character in this story, RiotRWBY. Since I'm not completely blind, I can very clearly see these two versions look absolutely nothing alike. The only commonality between the two is that they're both redheads. I wouldn't even know if this stickman SAP was Rita if the name wasn't said in the trailer. Heck, I wouldn't even know this was a girl, if not for the voice sounding feminine. I also wonder how the heck this character design made it past the concept stage, especially with this particular art style. With the eyes being too far apart, or the nose being two incomplete noses instead of a full one, or just a simple line nose, the strange hair that looks like it was caught up in a leaf blower and it had to be cut out, it's all very strange to look at. Not to mention the very lanky proportions that make either the arms or the legs look too long in any given scene. Truthfully, it makes for a very unappealing looking main character. But oh boy, it actually gets so much worse. Now, for the actual main character, KG, he doesn't actually look too bad in the movie, at least in comparison to Rita. But that's not really saying much, only that he has a slightly better haircut, and his eyes don't look so far apart. Although, still has that weird nose that's on Rita as well. And his face is strangely elongated, and his eyebrows look like they were drawn on with a Sharpie. Definitely not comparable at all to his manga design, or even the light novel version. He and Rita both look like strangers in comparison. His designs are just awful, both visually and failing to adapt the work at all. It gets worse though. This might be a scary movie with man-eating flowers, but the scariest thing I actually saw in the trailer was this design. When English subs came out for this trailer, I realized this was supposed to be Yonabaru. What is this? What am I looking at? This design wasn't released, it escaped. I mean, forget about this design not looking like the character, he looks barely human. The face is too elongated, with the mouth being too far away from the nose and the eyes. Speaking of which, the nose is barely recognizable as a nose. The proportions make me think of a hunchback Slenderman. The color palette for the hair looks putrid. The teal hair was definitely a choice. And again, like with Keiichi, the eyebrows look like they've been drawn on with Sharpie. Why are the guy's eyebrows drawn out with Sharpie? And then there's Shasta. Oh wait, she actually doesn't look too bad. She's got glasses and the same twin braid hairstyle, discounting the weird eyelashes. And for some reason, she looks like a Code Lyoko character to me with that massive forehead. Unfortunately, when it comes to this movie, least bad is still terrible. And then there's Rachel. Oh, sweet Rachel. One would think with everyone else being de-aged by 10 years, the movie would follow the same pattern for Rachel, but no, not in the slightest. The movie decides to throw a curveball and triple her age, making Rachel into a senior citizen? Instead of being mostly mortified, I'm just confused. My only guess as to why this change took place is to avoid making her a flirt, but Why? They all look terrible, come on. Not a single one of them is more than 20% accurate to the actual character. And somehow the plot is even less accurate. But I suppose more often than not, mixed media adaptations that don't care about adapting the visuals usually don't care about adapting the plot either. More often than not. Unfortunately, this movie is not an exception. Because even with just watching the trailers, I can tell this movie adapted almost zero jack squat from either the book or the manga. Most obvious change being is that Rita is now the protagonist instead of Keiji. Now, I do like Rita from the manga, and she is supposed to be the second most important character. But she's not supposed to be the protagonist. Keiji is. But instead, in the movie, Rita is doing all the things Keiji's supposed to do, effectively replacing him. It doesn't appear Keiji's replaced Rita either. As the mysterious cool foreign war veteran, he's just there, seemingly at the exact same level she is. Possibly weaker. That's important because Rita being at the top of her game is a primary motivating factor for Keiji to get stronger. A summit to reach for, being a warrior on the battlefield. But without that initial perspective coming from the protagonist, I don't know what these characters' dynamics will be like. Other less obvious changes include Rita's origin story being completely different. Definitely not a Midwestern farmer's daughter here. I mean, since she's replacing Keiji, her previous characterization doesn't matter, right? Speaking of Keiji, I also noticed that I hesitate to call it an exoskeleton suit, because it's definitely not modeled after the human skeleton, and it looks really flimsy and makeshift, with a glass dome over the characters' heads that screams to the mutant flowers, "Hit me! My head will explode if you target this area." Anyways, his suit is blue, while he's fighting alongside Rita. This is important because Keiji painting his suit blue is supposed to come at the end of the story, in honor of Rita's memory. But since his suit is clearly blue much earlier in the story, that powerful, poignant moment is probably completely removed from the movie. Gosh, he doesn't get to do anything that he did as the main character, does he? Then there's also the antagonists of the movie, the aliens who come to terraform Earth. The mimics, who I can only describe as demented-looking Pac-Men who shoot out spikes like pufferfish, are now the Droll, mutant-looking carnivorous plant aliens with spider bodies, which is definitely a choice. But one that makes me think that the way the time loop is supposed to work will be altered, since the loop comes from them. I'd wager a guess that the loop will be more plant-based, and thusly the effects that it has on the characters will be different. Main point being, the antagonists are also completely different. So yeah, I can't call this an adaptation. Maybe an anti-adaptation. Since the only things that seem exactly the same are the names of the story and the characters, some hair colors and suit colors, and a general vague concept of a time loop. You know what? I'm gonna say something crazy. I think Edge of Tomorrow blows this thing out of the water. Like, yeah, it's an Americanized version of the story, with characters' names and locations being changed, and then it's more action-oriented instead of character-oriented. The aliens are also different too. But to be fair, the manga and the movie came out in the same year, so they didn't have a visual reference while making the CGI. This animated movie doesn't have that excuse coming out in 2026. Regardless though, Edge of Tomorrow is more accurate when it comes to portraying a gritty military story about a guy trapped in a time loop, and what sacrifices are made along the way to actually live. Jesus, I guess all you need is kill is the exception that proves the rule. The Americanized Hollywood version is more accurate than the Japanese animated version. Being the morbidly curious kitty that I am, I needed to have some kind of answer as to why this movie is like this. Oh boy, did I find a couple. And they all got one thing in common. From an interview with the Anime Herald, director Akimoto answered why the movies look so different. From the very beginning, he wanted to create something very original, completely different than all the other versions that exist. Then when asked about the de-aging of some characters, he replied that right from the beginning, he had spoken to the producer about making the characters younger and more civilian-like, to create more empathy and resonate more with the viewers. I see. When asked about the character designs being super out of pocket, he replied he wanted to make something very original. And this was the character designer's first time character designing. You know what's tragic? This is actually this story's first anime adaptation. It's not like there's other anime versions out there. This is the only one. And it was hijacked by a guy who wanted to use an established property as his own personal sandbox. Because he helped make such a terrible looking movie. It will probably be a while before any studio looks at this and touches the IP with a 10-foot pole. Kenichiro Akimoto, you are on my naughty list. I will not ever forgive you for this transgression. Alright, glad I got that off my chest. Well, if anyone's interested in All You Need Is Skill, after watching this video, I recommend any other version but this animated movie. Personally, my favorite is the manga, and I am truly horrified that this movie did not take any visual reference from it. With that, I think I'm gonna cleanse my brain with some Apothecary Diaries. Right Kitty is signing out. Peace.